We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. Hello, everyone, and we have come to the weekend. It's time for me to hand over to the great story behind the Wizard of Oz. Zachary.
Thanks, Caroline. So today's video is going to be about a number of topics. Currency, the politics of late 19th century America, westward expansion in the United States, and most importantly, how all of those things relate to a novel published in 1900 called The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. So, I'm sure that most of you watching this are familiar with the 1934 musical film based on the novel. But the novel came first, as they so often do. It was by a man named L. Frank Baum. And Baum was writing in the context of late 19th century America, which was a time of a lot of political turmoil, upheaval, both in daily life, the national economy, and just, the United States was sort of evolving into the industrial capitalist society that it would be throughout most of the 20th century. And into all this chaos came Baum and a novel that he said he wrote to provide a fairy tale for Americans. And he insisted when he wrote it that he had no intention of expressing a political message of anything like that. But scholars since then have sort of interpreted the novel in some ways to be reaction to a lot of the conditions in the United States as he was writing it. So one thing that was really important around 1900 and the years leading up to it when the novel was published was the battle over currency in America. So there was a faction largely centered in the Republican Party that wanted to maintain the gold standard, meaning that all dollars issued could be redeemed with gold. There were others, many of whom identified themselves as populists, who wanted what was called bimetallism. Dollars could be redeemed with both gold or with silver. And so I think knowing this, you can start to see some parallels with the plot of The Wizard of Oz. Dorothy, of course, famously walks down the yellow brick road. In the novel, she wears a pair of silver slippers, which in the film were made exactly. They were ruby slippers. I think it had something to do with how red popped much better in Technicolor. But in any event, the silver slippers, the yellow brick road of gold. You start to see some of the parallels with the struggle over the currency standards. And then looking at a lot of popular political cartoons at the time, these interpreters of The Wizard of Oz started to see that the Scarecrow and the Tin Man were often commonly appeared as figures in political cartoons of the era, representing agricultural workers and industrial workers, respectively. The crushing of the Wicked Witch of the East can be interpreted as the American Civil War, the freeing of the Munchkins from her control as the Emancipation Proclamation, ending slavery, which sort of kicked off a lot of these political struggles of the time. Dorothy attempts to travel to see the Wizard of Oz. A lot of political figures of the era were referred to as wizards, including Republican President William McKinley. The Cowardly Lion is often interpreted as a stand-in for populist politician William Jennings Bryan, while the Wicked Witch of the West and her servants, the Flying Monkeys, stand in for all the dangers of westward expansion and settling, and the monkeys are seen, rather unfortunately, as stand-ins for Native Americans, the indigenous inhabitants of the continent. Baum was actually a notorious advocate of extermination, of genocide. He was... had some pretty ugly views about Indians and how he thought they should be treated. And so all of this is, one potential reading of the novel. It was a commentary on...
and then the yellow brick road is interpreted
as... the gold standard.
Yeah, and tell them about the gold standard.
Well, I mentioned, this is sort of how I opened the discussion, but the gold standard was it was a currency system whereby all paper currency had to be backed by an equal amount of gold, and that restricted the money supply. It meant that fewer dollars could be issued by the government. And so, a lot of this might seem fairly far-fetched, and I think it's questionable whether this was the interpretation that Baum intended. But I'd like to pose that it doesn't really matter whether he intended it. These were the ideas that were in the air. This was the soup that he was marinating in when he wrote. And I think what we can take from this sort of like allegorical reading of The Wizard of Oz is that authors often say things they don't intend to say when they write, because we are all creatures of our time. We are all affected one way or another by the politics and the cultural currents that surround us. And when we express ourselves through art, through a novel, or through any other medium, we're channeling those things.
And that's like Gone with the Wind with Margaret, what was her last name?
Margaret Mitchell?
Yeah.
Well, Mitchell was very explicitly writing a defense of the slaveholding society of the South. I don't think there was anything subtextual or unintentional about that. I think she was very much bound up in the lost cause ideology. But there's a lecture for a different day. But I just thought these were some interesting facts about or facts or theories about a popular piece of American pop culture that I think we can keep in our head as a guide to interpretation and a sort of interesting reflection of how the times we live in reflect what we produce.
But didn't Dorothy represent someone as well?
Well, I think she can be sort of seen in a way as kind of like the innocence of the common people, the sort of credulous nature and sort of inherent goodness that Baum saw in the American people. And yeah, that's The Wizard of Oz. So I don't know, Caroline, do you wanna play us out with some more singing, or are we gonna close this one off?
No, I haven't got a soprano voice for Somewhere Over the Rainbow, but thank you, Zach, and hope you enjoyed that one.
Bye.
Bye.